So good morning. So this weekend I was asked a question with respect to the schedule for master plans coming before our full council, and that I had held up those master plans coming to full council until there was a resolution of the school issues. And I'm pleased to say that I do believe that we have language now that is met with acceptance in the community with respect to making sure that every parcel that is coming before us in these three master plans is assessed for its ability to provide either a elementary school site or a middle school site. And what that issue, and so with that language, I will be moving forward with Rock Spring, and the committee's still working with White Flint. My hope is that we can conclude those actions. And we heard testimony the other night with respect to Grosvenor, which really wasn't an issue with respect to schools per se. So I do think we will be in a position to have all those master plans acted upon in the near future. But what the larger issue raised for me was the issue of funding of school construction. The superintendent of schools just came out with his budget, and the reality is we have such incredibly unmet needs in our county, something on the order of $1.8 billion, that we have so much more that needs to be done, and quite frankly, our county cannot do this alone. We need more from the state. We need more from the governor. And so today I have sent a letter to the governor on my own behalf saying we need at least an additional $100 million more in school construction funding in his budget proposal to the legislature. And my hope is that the governor will look positively on that. If you want to make an impact on people's lives, if you want to touch people where every day our parents are so concerned about school overcrowding, this to me is something that the governor ought to seriously consider. We do not get our fair share of school construction dollars. We have over 18% of the school's students. We get something on the order of 12% of the school's dollars. So we do need more. This is not going to happen, though, if Montgomery County just raises its hand and say, give us more. It's clear that the state as a whole has to provide much more if Montgomery County is going to get more. And that's my goal with respect to this letter to the governor that you now have a copy of. We have a lot of things coming before the council tomorrow. One of which is our M83 resolution, which Councilmember Reamer and others have co-sponsored. And I was surprised at the extent of what I perceive to be misinformation about this resolution. What this resolution really does is recognize reality, which is that the county executive has not asked ever for funding with respect to this road. And yet this road continues to be used for master plan purposes to allow additional capacity to be built in that part of our county. And so what this resolution does, and I believe wisely does, is say, just don't count on this road for purposes of determining how much additional capacity should be allowed in that part of our community. It doesn't take it out of the master plan. Future councils can decide that actually we will fund it, notwithstanding that the county executive hasn't sent it over, or a future county executive could decide to fund it. So it doesn't take M83 out of our master plans, but it simply says until somebody puts forward a proposal with respect to it that's real, don't assume it for purposes of making the situation that is bad today worse going forward. And I do feel for the people where we've allowed capacity to be built in an area where this road has not been built. So that's not good government. I recognize that. But what would be worse is if we compounded that situation by simply allowing more development to take place. And so I think that this was a wise resolution. I believe it will be accepted by my colleagues, and I think that that's what's appropriate. We have the cemetery legislation coming up tomorrow as well, and I think that we've worked out, or the committee has worked out, most of the kinks with respect to that legislation, and I do think it puts us on much more solid footing going forward to address this issue that absolutely needed to be addressed. And so I'm pleased that we will ultimately get to a resolution with respect to that matter. I will be introducing tomorrow a measure with respect to developmental disabilities. We just had a committee briefing, two committee briefing on the challenges of our developmental disability community, and particularly when it comes to housing and the services that are required. The legislation that I will be introducing with the support of every one of my colleagues is to reaffirm our commitment to pay 125% of minimum wage going forward, particularly as we consider the minimum wage legislation, which will also be coming before the full council a week from tomorrow is the current schedule. We had Paul Wiedenfeld came out with his Metro budget, and I believe it is a wise budget. It is a prudent budget. It is a budget that recognizes that we have yet to come up with dedicated funding for Metro. So it is a pretty conservative budget. It keeps the operating budget close to the 3%, if not under 3% of an increase. And its capital call is I think something on the order of $139 million. Is that correct? And that is well within what our governor had already indicated. He was prepared to put in another $125 million over 4 years. So I am hopeful that the various jurisdictions will be able to come up with their pots of dollars that are necessary to ensure that Metro has the dollars it needs. We do need to get to yes on dedicated funding. And so we are not giving up on that dynamic, but it is clear that in an election year in particular, it is more elusive than I had hoped. So it won't, I had spoken with too many of my colleagues in the state legislature prior to the governor's commitment, in which they just turned to me and they said, Roger, we're not raising our hand for a sales tax increase, if that's what you think. And obviously the governor's proposal takes that off the table for some period of time. So we need to work, in my judgment, with the rest of the region on making sure that the governor's 125 is matched by the other 3 jurisdictions, including the federal government, which must step up. I'm also pleased that the county executive is moving forward with Vision Zero. You might have seen a press release just came out today indicating that on Wednesday he will release our 2-year Vision Zero plan. It was felt all along that it would be wise to come up with short-term measures and then focus on longer-term measures. Vision Zero is something that I championed and had Mr. Reamer's full support with respect to, because we've had too many deaths on our roads. Something on the order of 19 to 40 deaths every year for the past 5 years. And so what we really need to do is focus on some of the things that we know we can do, and that includes protected bike lanes. Mr. Reamer and I were at an event the other day in Silver Spring where you see these protected bike lanes, and they really do make a difference. And for the average biker, you just have to feel safe in order to bike. And we want to encourage people to bike, but they're not going to bike if they're not feeling safe. And these protected lanes do just that. We need to do more in Bethesda, and we've got a meeting scheduled for Wednesday night that Mr. Reamer and I are co-hosting to explore how we can bring more protected bike lanes to Bethesda and other areas as well. But it's one of the things that we can do. You may recall that we had a death on Massachusetts Avenue of a biker who was hit by a car. And it simply would not happen with protected bike lanes. Let me see what else we have. Oh, I was pleased. We're obviously going to be meeting with Senator Cardin later today. I hope some of you will be able to stick around. Senator Cardin is just such a fabulous representative for our state, our country, and obviously for our county. He and Senator Van Hollen sent Brian Frosch a letter the other day with respect to the FAA issue. I have spoken with our county attorney insofar as I had urged our county to take action against FAA in its own right. Our county has now entered into a cooperative agreement with the state attorney general, and so it is my hope that Mr. Frosch will, in fact, move forward as the governor has directed and as our United States senators have urged, and as our council and myself have been trying to bring about for some period of time now. I would also observe that our county is going to be joining as an amicus in the DACA litigation. As you may be aware, there are a number of jurisdictions throughout the country that are legally challenging the Trump administration's decision to end DACA, and our county is joining as an amicus brief in that effort, arguing, as many jurisdictions have, that the action of the Trump administration was arbitrary and capricious and does not meet the standard of reasonableness that is required of actions of that nature. And so the county attorney just today indicated that our county would be joining in that amicus brief that will be filed by a number of counties throughout the country. I think that does it for me. What about you guys? What's on your minds?
In terms of working out things with the cemetery, specifically what's being done to accommodate their concerns?
Well, what I can say is that now the inventory could be updated at any moment in time. Two, at the moment in time when, for example, in the Westbard plan, which is one of the things that gave rise to this set of issues, that they come in for a preliminary plan, this legislation would require this to have been dealt with at that point in time. So I think it's more comprehensive than it was originally and just basically strengthens the bill to ensure that we do this throughout the entire county, that the inventory can be updated at any moment in time, that developers are held to either have constructive notice or actual notice. If they do have actual notice or constructive notice, they need to bring it forth themselves. So I feel that there were a number of ways in which the legislation was strengthened in order to meet all the needs that we must meet. Are there other things that perhaps could be done? I'm sure. But I do believe that this is a good faith effort on the part of our council to address what was a very troubling dynamic.
You mentioned the airplane noise. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up with Senator Cardin today?
Oh, I'm sure that there'll be a lot of things to take up with the senator. DACA will be one of them, as to whether or not the Senate and the House of Representatives can get their minds around this and move forward. Obviously, there's concerns with respect to almost everything before our Senate and House these days, not the least of which is tax reform and its implications for our community and other communities. So there are big issues that will be coming forth, and not the least of which is obviously the impact of the indictments that came down this morning and how that will impact the Senate and the House going forward.
Are you guys planning to do something similar for in case TPS gets canceled?
I apologize. Say the question again.
I mean, you are doing this for DACA, but are you planning to do something similar in case TPS gets canceled? It is expected an announcement on November the 10th.
So I apologize. I'm not familiar with the acronym. So we will look at that when it comes up. So it is not something that we have discussed yet internally, but I am sure it is something that we will look at closely. I'm just not in a position to make a commitment with respect to it, particularly since it was the county attorney's office as opposed to the council's action that we were discussing. Okay.
Given the Department of Justice's, statement that they're going to crack down on sanctuary jurisdictions, I know you say Montgomery County is not one, but have you heard from the Department of Justice about the county's, lack of enforcement on immigration?
Roger Berliner has not heard that, and I will affirm what I've said previously in the way in which you reframed it. I would just take it. We are not a sanctuary community, period. It's not just I say it. We are not one. We do cooperate when people have done things that justify making sure that our federal immigration officials are notified. There have been instances in the past in which a mistake was made, but it was recognized at the time it was a mistake. But we do cooperate with federal immigration officials when people are in our system who have done things that you say, I'm sorry, not okay. And so we alert federal immigration officials. We let them know what time these people are being released, and it's up to them to be there. But we are not a sanctuary community, period.
In terms of the school construction money you're looking for from Governor Hogan in the budget, have you talked to him about this before sending this letter? And what do you think the chances are of something like this?
I have not talked to the governor personally, so this will be my, if you will, my conversation with the governor. The governor has, my hope is that the governor will take this very seriously. It is a serious issue, not simply in Montgomery County, but there are many jurisdictions which struggle with this, but none more than Montgomery County. Our system is growing faster than any system in the state. This year we are projecting almost 3,000 more kids than last year, a high school. Okay? It's a huge deal. And our county already pays something on the order of 85% of the school construction dollars. So it's simply not fair to our county. It's not fair to our parents. It's not fair to our teachers.
Is what Montgomery County pays for school construction that much different, say, from a Prince George's County or a Calvert County?
I don't have the numbers in front of me percentage-wise, but I believe that the percentage that we spend exceeds that of other jurisdictions, in part because we get less back from the state and because of our needs are so great.
Some weeks ago, you had asked a law firm to look into the FAA suit. Have they written back yet?
My understanding is that they have provided our county attorney with memorandums. The county attorneys, in their judgment, have not released those memorandums, have shared them with our state attorney general, and I defer to them as to how they handle those matters.
Do you have any view on a potential sugar tax in Montgomery County?
I am not supportive of a sugar tax in Montgomery County. I do believe that the issue that it was seeking to address, which is to make sure that we make progress on universal pre-K, is a very important issue. But I believe that what government must do is look at that priority and determine how it can address that priority item in light of our budget. I think that there is a sense out there of tax fatigue, and I think that this would only compound that dynamic. I would also say that there are communities that have passed a similar measure, only months later to repeal it in light of public outrage. And I don't know the extent to which Cook County is emblematic of Montgomery County, but clearly this is something that took that community by storm and forced them to rethink. I do believe we need to make more progress on pre-K, particularly with respect to our Title I schools. I don't know how quickly we can get there, but I was proud, obviously, in this last budget that we made incremental progress on pre-K and Title I schools, and we need to continue to make that progress. But budgets are often about making hard decisions and living within your means, and so I think that that's fundamentally what we need to be doing with respect to this issue.
Is there a way to fund pre-K in the existing budget for these Title I schools?
Well, not universal, but I think we can continue to make incremental progress. What else, guys?
One other issue, this is kind of new. Delegate Lukey today sent out a press release announcing 2 bills to reform county alcohol laws at the state level. One would allow alcohol stores to open in grocery stores, a store within a store model, if you will, but it would only allow county dispensaries to open inside county in grocery stores. And another one would change a number of regulations, but one in particular would remove the requirement that bans county liquor stores from selling cold beer, cold wine. And those are 2 of the proposals in the 2 bills that he's putting forth. Would you have any early views on that? Have you seen anything about that?
I have not seen anything with respect to it, so I'd be reluctant to opine with respect to it. I would say that I had conversations years ago with our Department of Liquor Control with respect to the model that Mr. Lutke is describing with respect to in our grocery stores, having county facilities in our grocery stores. So I was advised at the time that there was no reason why they couldn't do it. So in a world in which DLC continues to go forward, I think that that is something that would be well received and would increase revenue. As you know, my posture with respect to DLC is that I think that it ought to compete with the private sector as opposed to have this unique monopoly which it has today.
But do you think not allowing privately owned stores to open in grocery stores would be allowing the deals?
It would create obviously a competitive advantage to the monopolists that we have today. No question about that. Okay, guys? Thank you.